So if you've been watching my channel for a while, you already know that I have this habit of reaching into my past and pulling out a story that I think is relevant to whatever it is we're talking about, whether it's a trailer reaction discussion or a movie review, or I just think it's an interesting story or at the very least funny. Today is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be sharing with you a story from a fan that was given to me, and I asked for their permission in advance. They said it was okay. I think that it's an inspiring story. It's a little bit harrowing. It's definitely something that I haven't had to go through, but I think that there's a number of you who have had to deal with it on some level. And even if you haven't had to deal with it, it's worth knowing about and being aware of. So I'm going to read this straight out of my phone. Here we go. I apologize. It's a bit long, but trust me, it's worth hearing. For as long as I can remember, I have seen my father abusing my mother, physically and mentally. Me and my younger brother, we both used to study in boarding schools, so we would come home twice a year and just for a few days. Things used to seem normal on the surface, but I could see the marks of beating on my mother's back and hands sometimes. I remember I was in 3rd grade and had come home for summer holidays, and I would wonder, why is Ma not happy? Why does she cry when no one is looking? But I could not figure it out. Year by year, things got worse. He would beat her to a pulp, and she would not tell us anything. Honestly, me and my brother, did not realize things were this worse, which I still feel guilty about. In 9th grade, I came back home to study in a local school. Once I started staying at home regularly, I started discovering the monster that he was. He would beat her till the sari she wore would get torn, and her mistake was that she forgot to put salt in the food. I just couldn't take it. I started rebelling in any way I could, getting in the middle and stopping him, and giving him back harsh replies. Then he started beating me as well. I finally took a firm stand and said we're not going to stay with him anymore. By then I was in 12th grade. I had my higher education in front of me and my brother was in 10th grade. Even his education life was in front of him, and that scared my mother more than the torture she was receiving from my father. So she begged me to stand down in front of my father. Even I did not know what more I could do. There was no one who stood by my side saying, just do what you got to do, I am there. With my mother crying and begging me to apologize to my father, at 16, I gave up and apologized to my dad. He slapped me hard on my face as soon as I said sorry and told me, finally you remembered your place. I left home leaving my helpless mother alone with him. I finished my education. I fell in love with a guy outside my religion and caste. That's another story. I fought with him, and after 4 years of fighting, I succeeded and got married to him. My brother also went to USA for higher education. We thought things would get better with time. When he gets older, he would calm down. As you know, that divorce is a taboo in Indian society. But no, things were not going well. They were just becoming worse and worse. We tried convincing my mother to leave him, but she did not agree. We could not force her to get away from him. She feared the society way too much. Last year, I called my mother one day in October and she was sobbing uncontrollably. I knew exactly what must have happened. But this time, I don't know what changed inside me. I just couldn't sit and do nothing. I told myself, fuck everyone, fuck society, and you know what? I'm not going to listen to my mom as well. I booked the evening flight, I reached home, father wasn't home, I saw my mother was lying on the bed with a fever and blue-black marks on her ribs and back. I started packing her clothes. Honestly, I was scared and shivering, thinking he would return home. And God knows how he will react. My maternal uncle called at that time and said, I am with you, don't worry. And listening to those words, I started crying, but also realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I took my mom and went to a relative's house. As my flight was the next day, my flight was the next day. My father called her asking where she was, and I told him that we were not coming back. He disconnected the call without saying anything. I took my mom away from him and brought her to stay with me and my husband in Pune. She's been staying with me for the past 9 months. She is healthy and happy and teaches at an NGO now, primary school kids. Anyway, yeah, that was, as you can imagine, like when I first heard that, it was pretty emotional for me. And it's even emotional for me reading it now. What I think a lot of people don't realize is just like what some people go through. And if you've gone through something like this, my heart goes out to you. And I hope that you have the courage to persevere through that and come out the other side. And what is most harrowing to me about this story, one of the most difficult things to comprehend, is that this person, this woman, had to stand up to her dad, who brought her into this world in order to save her mother, the other person who brought her into this world. Like, I can only imagine the number that does on you. I had my bouts, my fights with my dad growing up. He wasn't a perfect guy, and there were certainly things that could have been much, much better. I didn't go through this at all by any stretch, but I knew what it felt like to need to stand up to my dad. I had major arguments with him growing up, big fights. And so to recognize that someone has gone through this thing where they literally have to turn on their dad. And this is not the only time I've heard of this. Like, close friends of mine have had to turn on their dads. And like, that's just such a crazy thought. And I want to let you know that if you're going through that, like my heart goes out to you. And I hope that you have the strength to come out the other side. Just be brave and reach out to friends and family. I know it's hard, and you'll probably see a lot of rejection from some people because of society and whatnot, but you got to try. You can't stay in that kind of situation. You got to do what you can. If you're someone who knows someone going through this, you got to take it upon yourself to help that person out, to be a good Samaritan in a situation like that, because you don't know what kind of benefit your actions can have by reaching out and trying to help that person. One of the things that also stuck out to me is that her mom stayed in that situation because of society. That freaks me out. I mean, that kind of thing happens in the States, where you get Stockholm Syndrome, where you get women who stay in these messed up relationships, either because the husband is the breadwinner or because they're just damaged they're damaged so much psychologically that they don't know any other way. They don't know how to get out. And it takes them years of recovery after exiting the relationship, if they don't get killed in the relationship, to like undo all that chaos and madness. My grandmother suffered at the hands of my grandfather from multiple beatings over the course of her life. She's still alive today, but she's got Alzheimer's and she's being taken care of full time now. Hearing the stories about my grandfather and grandmother, it just like, there are cool things about my grandfather that I like to talk about, but he was a bad dude in a lot of ways. I mean, the way he treated my father, his other children, and his wife, my grandmother specifically, it's just like, she never got out of that until he died. The reason I'm making this video is just to spread awareness about this kind of thing. It's one of those things that just freaks me out, that someone could be trapped in that kind of a situation. I really didn't know where I was going to go with this video. All I knew is that I wanted to share this story with you guys and start a discussion in the comments about this. And at the very least, hopefully, it gives you the courage to go on, to escape if you're in this kind of situation, or to reach out if you know someone is potentially dealing with that kind of thing, and be there for that friend, that family member who needs your help. You don't know what kind of impact you could have on their life. Anyway, I apologize if this was a preachy video. It touched me. It made me cry reading it. I told her it made me cry, and she said she was crying writing it, which is crazy. But it's just like, it's so like painful to read. Just all the different aspects of this. Can you imagine growing up? Like, let's say your life is relatively good. Can you imagine growing up and your whole life, you've just seen, like, looked up at the person who's supposed to be raising you and taking care of you is evil in your eyes because of how he's treating your mother? I mean, I can't even imagine. It's rough. And I hope that most of you guys watching this don't have to go through that. And I hope that if you know someone is going through that, you have the courage to help them out. Even as inconvenient as that might be, I hope you have the courage to do that. I love you all of you. I'm Jaby KOAY. Peace out.